Grow your practice, grow your wealth, grow your impact. Find out how to spend less time in the dental chair and more time on the things you love.
Welcome back to the Dental Wealth Podcast. With me in the studio, as always, is the magnificent man himself, Mr. Eric J. Morin. And I get the pleasure of introducing a second guest today, someone that, Eric has known for a while now, and he is the COO of Smile Ahead LLC. He's the author, which we just found out, best-selling author of Intentional Retention. So welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much.
We are excited for this one. I think Eric and I, as our guests know, we're very conversational. We don't have anything planned ahead. So we're excited to see where this was going. We were joking earlier, and, I know Eric had great things to say about you, the role you've been doing over there in North Carolina. So I'm really excited. I'm excited to learn more about, your book. And ultimately, I love talking to COOs of corporations. So it's fun to talk to the business route, but the operations of an organization is always fun to hear about because it's different everywhere. So it should be, run the same way, but everybody's got their own unique way. So we'll go ahead and get started. I know Eric had some things that he wanted to cover in the beginning. So let's just jump right in.
Well, Sean, thank you for being here. This is I read your book. I was saying I got the book before it went out live. So I feel privileged that I got the it's like a celebrity almost. I get to see it before it hits the press. But it's interesting because when I was going through the book, and actually Matthew asked me yesterday, so what do you think one of the biggest problems right now in dental is, and one of the biggest challenges? And I said, well, retention. It's retention. It's always retention. It's always people. It's always the biggest challenge in any organization. And I loved and was so intrigued by the title, Intentional Retention. So by the way, bravo on the title, because I was like, this is what people need to hear. And as I went through your book, they say you want the reader to go, that's me, or yes, or agree with it, or whatever. And I was like, oh my gosh, I couldn't agree more. This is so great. And I think I read it so fast. I opened it and literally went through the entire thing in one sitting, just because I was really just engrossed in the book and the concepts inside of it. So anyhow, glad to have you as a guest. This will be a great conversation. I know even with that title alone, people are like, okay, how do we have intentional retention in our organizations? So glad to have you here.
Thank you so much, Eric. I really appreciate it.
So I want to talk about your role at Smiles Ahead, but first I want to talk about the book. I want to jump right into the book because I think this is such an intriguing title, Intentional Retention. So if you don't mind giving a kind of a summary of what the book is about before we get into the specifics.
Sure. The concept or the nucleus of the book, or how it started, was really understanding throughout my career that we've shrunken the amount of leadership. Throughout all industries, we found ways of saying that managers can actually also be a supervisor, and directors can also be managers, and we've just spread leadership so thin that really for so many people, they don't have mentors like you. They don't have mentors to learn from. So we expect them to know how to do an interview. We expect them to know exactly how to do somebody's annual review. We expect them to know how to deal with somebody who may be offensive in the workplace, but nobody trains them. Nobody says, this is how you do it, and walks them through. And I'm not a fan of role play by any means. I actually quite loathe it, but at the same time, there are just so few leaders that have the time to explain to a brand new supervisor, this is how you should lead people. And it's because this is how you will keep people and how they will follow you. So that was really the start of the book. I hope that the book conveys that I've made plenty of mistakes along the way myself, but I think I've learned a few secrets on how to retain people. And I don't know if I've ever shared this with you, but I own a small business also in Kansas City, beauty salons, which is a story within itself. Had those for 6 years, and I have exactly the same team members that I started with. I've grown, but I've not lost anybody. So, retention is just so key to success, especially in the dental world. nobody wants to see a different dental assistant or a different doctor. So retention's huge.
Well, in a competitive landscape, when we talk about that, without giving away the book, right? You got to go get the book, but without giving it away, because I do want you to read the book. I want everyone to read this book. This is a very important book, and in fact, when I was reading it, Sean, our philosophies aligned so well, and that was one of the things that started Tower Leadership, and why I call it Tower Leadership. Even though people told me I should call it like the dental something, and I said no, it's about leadership, because at the end of the day, we get management. We don't like to use the word management, but all organizations need great management, and they do. But it's the leadership aspect that I was finding that the best practices had great leadership. The leaders were, and let's go back to their attention. The leaders were attracting and retaining top talent. Doctors wanted to work and learn from them. Hygienists, assistants, like everybody wanted to follow these leaders. And it was, Matthew and I joked one day, we were looking at a room full of really successful doctors, and we were like, why are these people successful? I mean, there's got to be something about them. We didn't have anyone who was a jerk in the room. We had, we were kind of just talking about it. And I was like, and we maybe dumbed it down a little bit. We were like, they're just all good people, is what we said. That was the initial thing. They're just all really good people. But really what we were saying was they were all great leaders, and they had great morals and ethics, and they believed in taking care of people, and they believed in really truly, they saw that if they took care of their people, their profitability would go up, and that their revenues would go up, and if they just retain top talent. In fact, I just did I was working with a group of doctors, and I did a Excel spreadsheet type of a calculation on what happens if a doctor leaves every 3 years and you replace them versus if that same doctor stays for 15 years. Right. And it's staggering. The organization says, I don't want to invest in leadership, but then by investing in leadership, you make so much more money. And I was able to quantify that and show doctors just how important it is. So what do doctors need to know about retention? And if you don't mind, share a little bit more about your background, because I think your background, you share a little bit in the book, but if you don't mind sharing a little bit of your background and what maybe gave you the philosophies you have, or how you saw those play out.
Well, I started in England as a roulette dealer in a casino.
By the way, Sean, Matthew was like, we have Sean's accent's amazing. So this, no matter what, this episode is going to be, the sophistication just rose.
Yes.
Let's stick with that theory. I started back in 1979 as a roulette dealer, and then casinos in England, you can't earn tips, you can't earn a really good living. So most expats either go on the cruise ships, they go to South Africa, or they go to the Bahamas. So, I like to think I was the smart guy that decided not to live in a small cabin. I'd go and live in the Bahamas. So I did that for 7 years, grew through leadership into an opportunity to move to the States. And of course, said, I'm British, I can't take that job. Opening a brand new riverboat in Illinois, and I had a great leader who recruited me and said, "Don't worry about it. We'll sponsor you." So, long story short, 1991, got my H-1B visa, and then became a citizen in 99, and really learned through just. I've worked for so many different companies. I've worked for startups. I've worked for established companies. I've worked with companies with absolutely no culture whatsoever, and tried to help create that culture. Again, learning from my own mistakes a lot along the way. And I give a lot of credit to the last company that I worked for after 40 years in casinos, which is when we got acquired by a different company. But Ameristar Casinos was just really the pinnacle of my career, because they had such a passion for their core values, and they just lived them every day. And it wasn't what those stereotypical, the sign on the wall that said, here are the core values, live by these core values, but we don't have to. You know, this was a leadership group, and as a very senior leadership group, the chairman of the board, the president of the company, the senior vice president of operations, they just lived those core values as well. So I like to think that if anything, the book pays a lot of tribute to that culture, because I learned so much from that company. They were just amazing. And I'm sorry that it's not in existence anymore, quite frankly. It's gone.
That's all. I mean, I think, Eric always stresses core values, core values, core values. And most people think of it as just a tongue in cheek type thing that comes in place, but it's how you hire, how you recruit, how you, let people succeed elsewhere. It's all based off of core values. And when you say, that was so big at a casino, I know a lot of our listeners were probably they do that at a casino. I think that's the biggest thing that we always tell people, or Eric, he preaches that to people, is this is not just a dental concept. Like, this is everyone. Like, the best of the best companies all live and die by their core values. Like, that's what drives the company. So by you saying the casino thing, it didn't even register in my mind that casinos would be run off of this element too. So I love that statement, because that just kind of opened my eyes to other industries and how they're doing it too.
One of the things that I say, Sean, and I'll take this, give credit to where I heard it, was a mentor of mine, Eric, and his name's Eric. I just like the name. No, I'm just kidding. He's a great mentor. And he and I were talking one day, and one of the things he stressed to me is every time there was a challenge, he would say to me, well, what do your core values say about that? And it was so interesting that when every time I had a challenge, I found the core values actually solved the problem. And it was like, this is crazy. Like, we literally have the rule book to how to do everything inside of our organization. And yet we don't use it. So, I mean, so many people just put them on the wall, and they don't really realize that they're living and breathing and how they truly impact organizations. And it gets me excited to even think about it, because I'm like, it literally solves so many of your problems. If you just go back and you say, well, this person did this. Well, what do our core values say about that? And I had a CEO in Atlanta, and I was part of a CEO group, and we were all sitting around at a table, and it was everyone's turn to weigh in on this gentleman's problem. He said, I've got an executive, C-suite executive. She's underperforming. I put her on a plan, it's been 6 months. She's still underperforming. It's hard for me to let a C-suite executive go. What do I do? And it just went from person to person. And most of the advice was give her 3 more months and, see if you can get her something, and this was constant. And it just came to me, and I literally said, well, what do your core values say about that? Yeah. And he came back to me, he wrote me a long letter, and he thanked me for that. He was like, all the sleepless nights that I lost, all the stress, all the challenges, I had the answers the whole time, because she violated our core values every single day. And if I had just followed our core values, I would have made the decision 6 months ago. I would have saved me a lot of stress. And so that's it. I love that you brought that up, because it's hard, because even in this podcast, only a small percentage of the people listening right now is really going to get that, right? You wish everybody would just get it. But some people, even when he said core values, went, oh, here we go, core values. I already got it. It's in a book somewhere. It's like, no, that's not it. So we're talking about core values. What are some other chief concepts out of the book that you've just really wanted to stress to the reader?
Just to finish on core values, you're absolutely right. And I wrote it in the book. Every answer to every challenge you'll ever have is sitting right in the core value. So we use it every day here. Our director of human resources, what do I do? And he's now coming to me and saying, so I have this problem, I'm following the core values, and this is my decision. So that becomes the answer to your question, which is, it's just really the culture. If you can keep the culture healthy, and you can, again, add the passion. So I work for Dr. Jack Barrow, who likes to say that he skips to work every day. And I do think, one thing that I hope comes from the book is that if you've got that passion and you truly believe in what you're doing and you enjoy what you're doing, then that seeps down. It does start from the top, and it just permeates throughout the organization. On the flip side, if I'm working with people that just are not happy and don't want to be here, then I encourage them to really go home and think about, what they're doing, because life truly is so short. Go and rethink it. Maybe this isn't for you. Maybe I'm not for you. Maybe this company's not for you. But the good thing is, again, a lot of credit to Jack. We are building a culture that's healthy. So that leads me into, I don't know that I created this or invented this, but I do talk about what I call the circle of life, and I've shared this with Jack a lot, which is the circle of life is very, very simple. If we take care of our team members, genuinely take care of our team members really will take care of our patients. And financially, our patients take really good care of us, which enables us to take really good care of our team members. I call it the circle of life, but it just works for us, so, and I think.
Sean, you and I are so aligned. I literally feel like I'm listening to myself sometimes when you speak. We're so aligned.
That's why I enjoy it when you're here in Charlotte. I love it when I know you're coming. It's like, yes.
It's so great to hear this, because, what somebody said, I was reading, actually, it came from Wharton School of Business, and they wrote, culture is, why do people come here? Why do people stay here? And how do we manage performance? And so because it does. Why do people want to come to this organization? Why do they want to be a part of it? Do they think they can grow their career here? Do they think that there's an opportunity? Do they like the culture? What is it that drives people to come to an organization? Dental's small. It's, you can have somebody across the country and people still know about that office, and people are coming for a reason. And there's a lot of reasons why people come. But then once they get there, why do they stay there? Why do they want to be a part of this organization? And what is the opportunity? And ultimately, what manages performance? How do we know we're performing, and how do we know we're doing well? And so I think when I think about those types of things, and going through culture and thinking about core values and thinking about how all this comes together, and thinking about taking care of people, it's something I've stressed since the beginning, which is all you have to do is serve the people. Like, as the doctor or as the owner or whatever, your job is to just take care of the people. If you'll put them first, if you'll not see them as, I always love, years ago, I came into this industry and people started using the word human capital to talk about their team. And I was like, okay, human capital is a room for is a conversation for the CFO in some boardroom somewhere. It's not what you call your team. And I was like, that's absurd. And when we talk about our team, it was like, all you got to do is look at them and say, how can and I always tell my team, I always say that my goal is help you reach your goals. Like, if I can help you reach your goals, just tell me what you want in life. And if I can focus my energy and my efforts on helping you reach your goals, then we're all going to win, because you're going to take care of the client. And we're all like, this is the circle of life, as you call it, right? It's the circle. I take care of you, you take care of the next person. We all win. The economy wins, the patient base wins, the community wins. Like, we all win and it really starts from this mentality of giving versus taking, right? I mean, it's kind of this idea, and people feed into that. And I truly believe that. And I think you've covered that well in the book. Is specific. By the way, he's got a lot of very specific advice.
Yes.
I don't want you to give all the specific advice, because I want them to go read this in all seriousness. And I'm going to push for your book at the end of this pretty hard, by the way, because I think that people need to go read this. Because when I went through your book, what I started seeing was strategic steps that business owners can take, and really going through almost a checklist of, am I doing this? Am I doing this? Am I doing this? And it really is how to build a great organization. It's the secret to building a great organization. We think it's P&Ls and management process, but it's not, is it? I mean, it's the people, right?
Yeah, it is. I wanted to segue into something that came out of a meeting with you, Eric. And we now use it as part of our language when we hire. So it is in the book, so I am giving this away. But in a meeting with you, you talked about our avatar. And what is our avatar in a doctor? And we've taken that now down to, what is our avatar in a frontline team member? From a call center to a dental assistant, to anybody that we hire. And we now use the acronym CHOC. And again, this really started with the meeting with you. And it was They've got to be cool, humble, approachable, likable, and kind. It's just as simple as that. So when we interview people, it's become part of our language now. We ask, were they chalk? And if the answer's, well, you know,
there's a chalk score.
So
you
my
walk
answer
away.
usually is, you're trying to tell me they're a crayon, because if they're not chalk, then it's not going to work. So yeah, we hire chalk.
Cool, humble, approachable, likable, and kind.
Yeah, just hit those. It's not that difficult. When you interview people, but it comes to, you can find that out pretty easy.
Yeah, you know, I see all these and I think to myself, would you want to spend time in a room with this person? Like,
Yeah.
That's I think we've all gone through the phase of like making the wrong hire on the front end. So, you know, having something like that in place is unique, but it's so simple to do that most people don't take the time to do it. You know, they'll have you know, lots of questions they ask, and then at the end, like, okay, you know, I think they're in great shape. I mean, I'm not. And then they get into the practice, like, okay, like they're not really fitting in with the culture, with the vibes.
It ties into, focusing way too much on the qualifications or the experience. I can help you with the experience. I can help you so much grow into this position. But if you're not chalk, you know, I can't teach you chalk. I just can't. I can't teach you how to be kind. I can't teach you how to be likable or approachable. You know, these are just intrinsic parts of your DNA. If you can't bring chalk, then there's not a lot that can do with you.
I had a mentor years ago who said, you know, Eric, what I like about you is that you're likable. And he said, I can teach a lot of things. I can teach sales training. I can teach all kinds of things, but I can't teach likable. I don't know how to teach likable.
Yeah.
It really is hard, but that translates into success. I mean, it's Smiles Ahead. You are a large dental organization. You guys are not just 2 locations. And so I think it's great coming from you and your position, because when the people who listen to this podcast tend to be successful practices. And I think that there's this, what people think of, and maybe sometimes it's an excuse to underperform. And I mean that in some ways, because it's, if we get too large, we can't take care of our team. If we get too large, we're not going to be able to maintain principled leadership. If we get too large, it's all about money and not about patient care. If all these stories, so to speak, that are created, but you're proving that that's not true at all, right? Through your leadership, through Jack's leadership, through the rest of the team over there. I know you guys have such an amazing team. But if you'll speak to that for a minute, because being a larger group, how do you manage that with, I mean, you guys have a lot of team members, so there's a lot of people to manage, and it's a lot of locations, it's a lot of places. So how do you take principles like this, intentional retention? How does that apply to growing a large dental organization, and maybe some challenges that come with it? You know, maybe make it more difficult, or is it not more difficult?
Yeah. So when I joined the company, which is just over a year ago, I think we were about 150 team members. We're now at 220. We've double the size of the number of offices that we've got. We've done a couple of acquisitions. So, and I think the answer to your question is, number one, I've put people in regional positions that now are very focused, and part of their my demands of them is you've got to be on the field. You have to be in the field talking to the frontline team members. You've got, because I can't hit 22 offices, you know, and still do my job. But our regional team can. So again, going back to what we've done over the last 20 years, which is suck out this middle management component of how to run an organization. I've put it back, and I think that works. But the key is, you can't, it goes back to, you can't just talk about core values. You can't just talk about culture. You've got to live it. So as crazy as the day may be, as somebody walks in my office, I've still got to be chalk, and I have to do it. You know, I had a conversation this week, should say last week, I had a conversation with a new leader that we have on the team, and we're not quite sure if they're a good fit. And I talked to our director of human resources, and I referred to the core values, but at the same time said, we have worked so hard to build this culture where we are seeing turnover shrink, to single digits where we were in double digits, a year ago. We're seeing turnover just shrink to I'm not happy about it, but even at single digits, but life happens. But if anybody is going to try and break or infiltrate that culture in a different way, I can't keep them on the team. They have to be communicated with very, very clearly. And that's where people go a little astray. They lose that passion, or they forgive. Well, there's a reason why they're not chalk, or maybe we'll give them a little bit more time. But you've just got to be passionate, and you've just got to stick to your guns and stay the course. If you don't expect anything but a sort of mixed message. So the message is the same every single day. We're here to keep our team members happy, to keep our patients happy. I don't always finish it with so that we're made happy, but just keep the team members happy.
Something I was thinking about when you said that, you mentioned where your management levels, and one of the things that I found recently was that I started seeing dental organizations. We do a leadership academy at Tower. We do a lot of different events and around leadership. But I started realizing that what was happening was in certain organizations, there's a ceiling of their leadership. And let me explain what I mean by that. Is that they expect, when it comes to core values, when it comes to taking care of people, when it comes to all these types of things that drive retention and a place people want to work, it's like a level below ownership. And what I mean by that is they'll go, well, I'm just going to worry about the production and make sure the numbers are where they need to be. You guys can all worry about all those other things. And so in a sense, they're deferring leadership, right? And I see it stunting leadership in organizations, because the top leader is the one who should be at the academy. The top leader is the one who should be learning. And I find it interesting when a leader says, well, I'm going to just defer that to somebody else and let them figure out the leadership, and I'll just stay up here and focus on the numbers. And don't you agree that puts a cap on an organization or its ability to grow? I mean, what are your thoughts on something like that?
You actually hit on something that's again happened recently. It does go back to how you lead the company and what your priorities are. So I hope I'm answering your question in the way that you asked it. Given the choice of looking at the financials, which is obviously part of my responsibility as the COO, I had to tell Jack, I haven't looked at April's numbers yet, and he wasn't miffed, but he sort of looked at me quizzically, and I said, but I've got some leadership issues that I've got some cultural issues that I've got to sort out. And again, if the circle of life is working, then I shouldn't have to look at the financials. The financials should be fine. So if I'm going to put effort and energy and my time into anything, it's going to be to keep staying the course of keeping the culture and the health of the company the way that it should be. And the financials will sort themselves out. We've got a great CFO.
Well, and going back to the quantitative, those of you that listening that need the quantitative, I shared a research with a kind of a mastermind group I did recently. It's a study that was done by McKinsey. It was an international study, and they went over 1,000 companies. It was something like 24 countries or something, and they interviewed 4.4 million team members. It's a large study. And what they were noticing was that the top quartile in organizational health, this was a study of organizational health, the top quartile had 3 times the growth and profitability as the bottom quartile. So the empirical data around when companies focus on intentional retention, when they focus on these concepts, and there's a lot of concepts, and feel free to talk about any of them. I love to hear the whole, we can put the whole book out. I just met, but I want you, I don't give away all the secrets, but I, what some people don't realize is the art, and what you're describing is perfectly summed up in that research, which is there's an art and science to every business. And sometimes we get so focused on the science that we forget about the art. And leadership is the art. And if we forget the art, you go, well, we'll just focus on the science and the numbers will work out. No, if you're losing doctors and you're losing team members and you're having a turnover, not even just the stressful load of that is too much for some people to even bear. But even then, 3 times the growth and profitability. I mean, 3 times. That's just staggering, the difference between having strong organizational health and not having strong organizational health.
Yeah.
And really, it goes down to intentional retention, because the companies that are struggling are the ones that do not have great retention.
Yeah.
And then that ultimately affects patient satisfaction. It affects other team members. It affects on and on and on and on. So I just want to reemphasize your point, and to reemphasize the point of why this is so important for everyone to lean into, is that it does, going back, it just made me think of that when you said that, Sean, which is you will have better financials when you lean into the thing that you can't feel or touch sometimes. And we want to feel and touch it like a car, but it doesn't work that way, but we know it when we see it.
Right? Yeah, you do. I think the other point, without giving the book away, is that we have such a tendency, and I think specifically in dental, Eric, is who becomes the office manager? The DA. There's a great dental assistant who becomes the office manager. Why? Because she's been there for 15 years. She's loyal. The patients love her. The doctor really works well with them. And then they're given the task of, you've got to do a review. You've got to do interviews. You've got to talk to this person because they've got bad breath. You've got to talk to this person because their telephone manner isn't well. And they just don't have the tools. They don't even know where to start. So the doctor who's gone through all of this training has no interest in human resources whatsoever, because they love teeth and taking care of their patients. And they rely on this office manager who is completely set up for failure. And then if you liken it to a great steakhouse, I know so many good restaurants that I'm blessed to say that I do. And you talk to the managers about their servers, and they say, well, they have to go through 6 weeks of training. 6 weeks of training before we let them anywhere near one of our guests who's going to spend $300-400 on a great meal. We would never let them anywhere near a guest. Do you do the same with your managers? What do you do with your managers? Oh, well, we just promoted Jenny because she was such a great server, and the customers love her. So hopefully the book helps, that person realize, all these things that you need to do an interview, to tackle some of these problems, and how to lead people. And again, obviously retain the other people that you have working for you.
What would you say is the biggest, we see this all the time. What would you say is, like, in your experience, the biggest cause of this? So office manager comes in and there's just a lack of the training on the front end. Is it just, the owner's just too busy? What would you say is, like, kind of the ultimate reasoning why you believe that's the case?
I don't think there are resources out there. I don't think most leaders, and it's not just doctors, it's in every industry, whether it's banking, insurance, it doesn't matter. The truth is, we promote people, expect them to know how to do the job, and the resources aren't there unless somebody has access to an Eric Morin, and they have that mentorship connection, how to become a better leader. Doctors, office managers, owners of small companies just don't know that those resources are out there. So, bluntly, what do they expect? You can only expect failure, because that poor manager is sitting there. And what happens is that when the review comes around, they don't do it. They do it late. They do a horrible job of it. They write it and they shove it in front of the team member and say, you got 5%. There you go. Read that. Sign the bottom, would you? And they miss the whole opportunity of celebrating. In fact, for me, that's that team member's work birthday. There's just so many easy things that they can do. But to answer your question, I just don't think there are the easy access resources, which hopefully the book will help new managers, small business owners read and just learn some of the intrinsic ways that you can get this circle of life going and stop your good people leaving. And people leave because they don't get the recognition. 17% of people leave within the first 90 days because they're not getting recognition. There is no culture. There are no core values. It's amazing to me that people leave, 5% of people leave just simply because there are no core values. People are looking for something to hold on to. What do you believe in? And when the manager says, well, this is just a nice place to work. Dr. Jones is terrific. We love her and the patients love her. It's not enough. It's just not enough.
It's not enough. And I think, let me ask you this question. Who should read this book?
I think anybody who is either preparing to apply for a manager's job or a leadership job, anybody that's looking for any type of leadership role, and more importantly, probably small business owners who just are thinking about promoting or don't feel that their manager has the support or the tools that they need. This to me is part of the toolbox. If you can read it and you get a nugget out of it, just how to do a review, how to do an interview, how to say goodbye to somebody, how to make that decision, any of the components that are part of the story that I like to tell in the book, then I think that's who really needs to read it. If I can, I think I may have mentioned in there, if one person can retain a great team member because they read the book and they realized that doing a review on time my own rule is 2 weeks in advance. You have to give somebody the review 2 weeks in advance of when it's due. It sends such a powerful message that, Eric, I was thinking about you. Your review is due on May the 22nd, and we're a little ahead of ourselves, but I've been thinking about you and I've made these notes and this is what I think about you. It sends such a powerful message that it's all about the team member. And they walk away and they go home and they go, yeah, my review was on time and it wasn't great and I've got some goals, but I was communicated with like a human being. That's an easy one. That's just an easy one. So anybody that wants to be a leader or wants to be a better leader, I think should read it.
I love it. So some of the key concepts, just so people understand, some of the things you cover. So what are the key concepts in the book that they're outlined in the book?
Again, just how to approach pretty much any problem, how to, again, do the interview, how not to make some of the faux pas that I've seen. One story that I tell is two, if I can share very quickly. One is when you're saying goodbye to somebody, please don't hug them and say, I'm sorry. Absolutely. And I've seen it happen. We're not working out and we have to say goodbye to you, but, let me hug you and say, how sorry I am, wish you the best of luck. The other one, another one was a review, an annual review, which was critical for this team member. They were an upcoming rock star. And I walked into the office of the director of human resources who was giving this review and interrupted. And they stopped the review to talk to me because I was the senior vice president of the company. And I admonished the director of human resources later and said, I want you to think about that. That was that team member's time. It was all about them. And you made it all about me. I was the least important person in that meeting. So, don't do that. And the other part, the other quick story that I tell in the book is point systems. I'm so passionate about point systems. So when I joined this company, there was a point system. You miss 10 days, or you're late X amount of times and you're out of the door. And I said, we're not doing that. That's not our culture. And I got challenged by quite a few people, but we have to have a point system. And they said, no, you really, really don't. As long as it's really not disrupting the core values and it's not disrupting patient service, then there are reasons why we don't have core value or we don't have a time and attendance system. And I tell the story that I had a young lady when we did have a point system with a big corporate company. She went to 12 points. She was out of the door. I found out that this was an abused wife who was living in her car.
Wow.
Yeah. So core values told me she stays. And I called our corporate office and I said, I'm about to break the rule, but I'm living by the core values. And again, Ameristar was a great company. I was supported in the decision. So I broke the rule and she stayed. And turned out to be one of our best team members. So,
well, that's a great story. It's a great book. Being in your position, this is a book that everyone listening to this podcast, you are a COO of a very large dental group. Your experience is great. I've gotten the pleasure to spend time with you on multiple occasions, and I really enjoy spending time with you. I enjoy your philosophy. So aligned in philosophies. I literally, as I said, I picked up the book and I just couldn't stop. I just went through the whole thing. I just was like, this is great. I just couldn't get enough of it. And I kept just going, yes, yes, yes. Yeah, this is perfect. Yes. And so, if you're looking for tips, if you're looking for techniques, if you're looking for experience, if you're looking, how do I do this strategically? What are the things that Sean would recommend? Like, what are the things, as a dental practice owner, a dental group owner, what are the things I need to know? I would get this for all my leaders. If I were you, anyone looking this, I would just get it for all my leaders. I would have all of them read it and then get together, sit down, go through it together. And you will find so many things that are influential that can impact your organization. I truly believe, and I'm going to get this book for a lot of people. I truly think this is a book that can be just practice changing. It can change the trajectory. And I literally mean that of your business. So, Sean, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate you taking the time to be here. I'm excited about getting this in so many hands. By the way, I went this morning on I opened my Google and I typed in intentional retention, and you can get it everywhere. I mean, it's Barnes and Noble, it's Amazon. It's like, this book is all over. It's a bestseller. This is absolutely a bestseller. Hit the bestsellers list. This is a book you do not want to miss out. And I'm so thankful to be sharing this time with you today.
Thank you, Eric. You are a mentor to me. Thank you very much for the testimonial, and keep doing what you're doing, because I follow you avidly.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
Great podcast. I think, this is the stuff that Eric, there's two concepts really that Eric and I we can never stop talking about: marketing and core value, like the cultural element of practices, because it's often overlooked. So make sure you guys get on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, get a copy of that book, subscribe, and we will see you next time. Thank you guys for joining us.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.